Wyatt.
Riley.
Welcome to the What Fills Your Cup podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Like, this is so cool. And we were talking about this earlier, like 15 years or something since we've seen each other last.
Talk about a blast from the past. I was thinking about when we played hockey together.
Yes.
I don't think our team won.
We didn't win a game. No, we didn't win a game.
I was trying to think. I was like, oh my God. I remember one of the guys on the team wanted to name our team the Teletubbies, but I think we ended up being called the Blues. And the Blues is what we felt after every single game.
Well, I think the best part is our dads were the coaches.
Yes. Our dads literally were the coaches, and we didn't win a game. But we have known each other since we were quite little.
Yes.
Like, how old were we? 7? 8 maybe?
Yeah, 8 was... That's the top.
That
would have been the latest that we met each other
for the first time. Which is crazy. We didn't go to elementary school together the whole time, but in grade 6 and 7 we were.
You were in French. I was in English. We were divided.
But we hung out at lunch all the time.
We did. We met each other. We saw each other on the playground.
Yes, because I remember we would always play games like... Remember that one game, what was it, wall ball or something?
Yes.
We would always play that at lunch, and I remember we would play, like, Manhunt.
Yep.
Like, I just remember, because I hung out with you guys, because I was like, fuck, I don't want to be on the monkey bars. I want to be running around hiding.
You were right in there with the guys.
And here I am now with the Men's Mental Health podcast.
There we go.
It worked. To start off, what are we drinking today?
We are having a lovely margarita.
I know, I'm so excited that you picked this. Cheers.
Clink. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
You did well.
Thank you so much. Thank fuck. Because as a bartender, that's really good. So to start off, I always like to have all of my guests have a little bit of an introduction to themselves. I would just love for you to talk a little bit about your upbringing, your passions, some of your hobbies, and give the audience a chance to get to know who is Wyatt.
For sure. Yeah. So... my name's Wyatt Barnsley. I was born and raised in South Surrey, White Rock, British Columbia. Grew up in a very sport-centric household. Like, grew up playing, like, hockey, soccer, rugby, baseball, lacrosse, like, pretty much everything. I think I threw some triathlons in there at one point as well.
Whoa.
Moved across the country, went to Brock University, studied sport management, ran track and field there, ultimately had my athletics career cut short with injury. Graduated mid-COVID, had every intention of living out there, but COVID kind of forced me back home, back to Surrey. Yeah, I've been here ever since. I still work in sport, but I've kind of tried to push myself out of, being one of the bros and only being able to talk about sport and try to, diversify my myself in terms of interests. And I think that's one of the big things that we're going to talk about today.
It is! I love that you talked about your sports and growing up playing sports, because I also think that sports heavily contribute to shaping you as an individual through what you learn during your sports, sometimes maybe team environments. It really gives you actually, I think, a really great start in how to navigate other people and their different personalities. So I love that you talk about that, and I also know that you grew up in a sports household. You have 2 other brothers as well.
I do, yes, 2 younger brothers.
House full of boys, your poor mom.
So much competition. And then, like, we had 2 dogs. Both the dogs are boys too. Like, Mom, you had the option. Like, you could have adopted a girl.
Like, Mom, anything to help your side.
Like,
but
even out the equation a little bit. But no, like, Mom was a great sport. And I mean, like, none of us live together anymore too, right?
Oh
so, like, we'll come back together for like, holidays. Holiday ruined. One game of Monopoly just kills everything.
You're like, so Sunday dinners were a thing, and that got cut short. One of the reasons that I really wanted you to come in is because I had seen on your social media that you have become an author. For those that don't know, your book is titled My Way and was originally written as a therapeutic practice for you, which then evolved in becoming a beautiful piece of literature and poetry from my understanding. So to start on this topic, what had inspired you to begin writing this book?
Yeah, so honestly, it came from, I was in a relationship in 2021, and honestly, it started as a gift. So I started writing it as a gift for the girl I was dating. Ultimately, that relationship ended borderline catastrophically.
Holy fuck.
After that ended, like, I went in and did some counseling and some therapy. And it was kind of like a recommendation to, find what medium I could use as an outlet for myself, essentially. And I wanted to write like a life story, and I tried writing it from a third person point of view. I can't write dialogue. Like, couldn't write to save my life. Probably made it 10 pages in. I'm like, nope. And then I looked back and I'm like, you know what? Like, I've started this. This is something that I know how to write. I don't know if it's any good, but it's something that, I can write. It can be free flowing. There's not a whole bunch of rules like there would be if I was writing dialogue, and it can just be, a piece could be 50 words if I wanted to, or it could be, 3 pages. Mm-hmm. So I started writing and honestly had no intention of ever having it published or ever having it public facing. And then I guess the start of last year, I kind of went back, and it was something I just kind of chipped away at. If I was in a mood or having a rough go, I'd go in, write a couple pieces, and then close it up and let it be. So last year I went back in fully editing it, and honestly I have to say that part was probably one of the most therapeutic, because a lot of the stuff I hadn't read since I wrote it. Going back, that was me reading 5 years of relationships and tough times and good times and traveling, and it's the same way I left the book. So I didn't change the order of anything. So I think one of my favorite things is going through the book. Like, you can kind of see the peaks and valleys and ebbs and flows of what my life had been from, I guess, 2019 to 2024. And you can see, where interests were and when I was traveling, or when I was really, connecting myself with nature, when I was missing sports or anything along those lines. So yeah, then I went about looking at what it was going to look like to publish it. Realized it wasn't that extreme of a process. Yeah. Had it published, and then I will say, having released it, I felt very naked. I historically haven't been like the most open person, and I think that's what part of this was me wanting to talk more, because I try to be as vocal as I can about the mental health side and what I've been through, but a lot of the times it's not the easiest thing. So I was like, you know what, if I can put this out there, and at the very least that's the start of the conversation for me to have. Yes. I think that was kind of what my intention was.
Look where we are now. It's the start of the conversation. It is also very scary having your emotions for individuals and anyone to pick up and read. And I feel even as though with songwriters, poetry is a huge side of that too, I believe, at least in my opinion, is that it is almost a snippet into who you are, and that's very vulnerable, and that's a scary place. But I also believe that writing, whether it be journaling or poetry or even just short stories, is very therapeutic. I think that something about like a pen and paper and writing down whenever you're having any form of emotions allows you to have creative freedom in writing whatever it is that you are feeling at that point in time. So how has writing not only allowed you to have a creative space to let your thoughts come onto paper, but as well as allowing you to find that confidence in having your writing be shared with the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is, like, writing can be whatever you want. And that's what draws me to poetry, is as much as there's set styles, like, you can also just live in the free world and just go with whatever you want, say whatever you want. And the context can be anything you want too. And that's what the big thing was, is like, I can put things out there from my point of view. I can use the words I want to. And honestly, like, I can grow my vocabulary a little bit too. Like, the thesaurus was constantly
Cynthia.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, it's honest. I don't know that I'm ever gonna go to an open mic and rattle myself off like that.
Please, you have to invite me if you do.
It made me feel like, this has just made me feel like I have that much more of a voice. And quite frankly, like, putting this out there and putting a price on, like, a literal price on what people can pay to know a lot more about me than what was ever going to be available. Like, now I can go into any conversation. I'm quite literally an open book.
I'm so happy you said that.
It's just made me so much more open to conversation, and like I don't really have a problem with talking about anything. And it's one of those things where these are the type of conversations that I was so okay having with complete strangers. But it was more the people who I'm really close with that I always had like such a problem with. Like, I always draw it back to 2020, like right before the pandemic hit. My grandmother passed away. So like we were isolated. I want to say it was February or something. So we hadn't been locked down, but you know, travel was restricted. So I couldn't go out from Ontario to Edmonton to be there. My mom was the only one with her, and I was still running track. So like I'd hurt myself at this point. That alone had me kind of moping in my room. We go to Windsor for a track event. I tore my hamstring almost completely in warm-ups, and 2 days before, like, my grandmother had passed away, and I got that news. And I didn't talk to anybody. Like, I lived in a house with my 4 best friends, or my 3 best friends, and like honestly just shut the door, and like nobody really saw me for a day or two. And then I went away, hurt myself in warm-ups, like got into the blocks, ran the race, and then just like went, like, threw a jacket over my head under the bleachers and just like bawled my eyes out, because I'm like, my season just ended, my grandmother just passed away, like I have no way of communicating this, just because I wasn't comfortable having those conversations, right? So it's kind of like, it's made me look back at those situations and like understand, like, okay, I handled that poorly. Like, there was people there who wanted to have that conversation, but it's just something that I'm much more open having those conversations and talking to people about, you know, the uncomfortable subjects at this point, especially, and this helped me a lot.
Totally. To start, I'm so sorry about your grandmother. Having that emotion of grief on top of then having physical grief of like, I am injured. I am now having to deal with 2 things. I've lost someone that I love dearly. I've also feel as though right now I've lost a passion that
that's the thing. Like, it was like, my outlet is gone.
Yeah. No, completely. I completely understand what you're saying when it comes to talking to your friends about your emotions, because you almost don't want to maybe come across as a burden or come across as, I don't want you to stress out because I'm having a hard time.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, I think going through high school, like, you know, you're going to have your fake friends and whatever that you have. But I think I was just a terrible friend in the sense that the second I knew that somebody was open, like, I would throw so much on them. And it was just like the naivety in me understanding what I was going through and understanding, you know, what depression was and what it looked like on a daily basis. And I would just like completely throw friends like under the bus. That was what I was dealing with. And I think it, like, maturing and getting older and understanding what like a true friendship looks like ultimately you're not a burden. Like, share whatever you want. Like, if a friendship is real, like truly real, they're gonna say, like, ask you to pump the brakes if it gets to be too much.
Totally.
Like, and I think that's the big thing is, like, knowing you can have those conversations. Just trust the people around you enough to, you know, ask you to simmer down or tell you what the limit is. But if there's anything I've learned, it's, you know, those conversations are okay to have. And
yeah. And I think also boundary setting with your friends is so important.
Absolutely.
And being able to say, or even, you know what, I don't think I'm the right person for this. However, there are resources, or I will help you find what will work best for you, whether that be a form of art, whether that be writing, whether that be going outside and getting fresh air, whether that be talking to a professional, sports. There's lots of different avenues people can take to support their mental health, and sometimes they need their friends to say, hey, I can help you in this process.
And it can be a huge wake up too, because I mean, ultimately those are the people you trust the most, right? And
you're like, news flash.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just not the things that you're going to think of, or it's not the questions you're going to ask yourself, right? 100%. Sometimes you need that, you know, the second set of eyes to look things over.
Exactly. Now that we've gotten into the topic of community, I would love to know, what was your family's reaction when you told them that you were going to publish this book? And also, what was their reaction when you actually went through and published it and they read it for the first time?
Yeah, so I chose a really interesting way to do this. I think I told my mom the day I published it that I was doing it.
Wyatt.
And then 2 days later, I went to Iceland. My whole mindset behind it was, I want to do this. I want to have 2 days where I can kind of just bask in it. And then I want to go and not exist to anybody and kind of just let whatever happens here.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back to it.
I just love that you went away.
Yeah,
that
it was
you
kind
were
of like the,
you know what?
ultimate like Irish exit.
Yeah, that is the ultimate Irish exit. But I also love that you have had the supports of family and friends to either tell you what they like or what they don't like. Obviously, your mom and your parents and your siblings are going to be super supportive and be like, this is so sick, dude. Like, congratulations at the end of the day. I think that having a great support system around you, especially when you are putting very vulnerable parts of you out to the world, it's very, what's the word that I'm looking for? You appreciate your surroundings a lot in those moments.
No, and that was a big thing, is it meant a lot to have the feedback come back to me. Even, some of it's like, maybe tweak how you're saying this, or, I don't know if this is conveying the way that you want it to. But honestly, like, just knowing people are taking the time to look it over, and like the reception was, it made me feel really good about the choice. And I think it let me have some further conversations with people who I think they understood why certain things happened at certain times a little bit better, because it hadn't fully been communicated at that point. And I think if you've been in my life long enough, reading it, what certain, like, I don't expressly say what certain things are, but I think to certain people it's very evident what things are about. I think that was one of the big things, that my mom read it and she could pretty much pinpoint like what everything was. And I think she's known some of the stuff I've gone through, and I think that hit a nerve with her, because I'm not the most open person, as I don't think very many people are super open with what they're going through at any given moment. And I think that was kind of just like a magnifying glass in terms of what was actually going on in my life at different times.
And I think as a parent, your part of you is reflecting, how could I not have known that this was maybe happening? Or I knew, but I didn't know it was at this extent. But also understanding that not everyone wants to talk to their parents about what it is they're going through, because, again, they don't want their parents to stress out, or
especially when you're living with them too at that point, and you don't want that coming back into your living situation. And as much as, I think everybody either themselves has gone through something, or they've been close with somebody who's going through something. And if you've gone through something, like, I think the last thing you want asked on a daily basis is like, how are you doing?
Yeah. You're like, do you want me to burst into tears right now?
It's like, I don't really want to get into it at this moment. Or, I might look like I'm going through it, but things are actually good right now. Let's not, ruin it with a conversation as to like what was happening yesterday.
I was fine, and then you brought it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally. So in your book, you also discuss periods of self-reflection, like you were just saying, ranging from, like what you said, relationships, travel, athletics, mental health. And given that this is a podcast about men's mental health, in terms of your mental health, what has been some of the biggest reflective periods of time for you, and how have you been able to navigate life when times get more difficult?
The biggest thing I did for my mental health was honestly go away. So leave home, live in Ontario for 4 years. Like that was a big thing for me. One of the first things I did was right after I turned 18, like I went, saw somebody got formally diagnosed with depression. Like I knew from grade 10 what was going on, but I think that was just a big thing in terms of confirming what I had already knew.
It almost validates your feelings a little bit.
Exactly. And at that point it was like, okay, like this is actually what's going on. I think a big thing was just getting a fresh start, being out there. I had one friend that we went to the same school, and that was it. I didn't know anybody else. So I went in there fully clean slate, meet everybody. And, like my best friend, we lived 5 feet away from each other for first year university, and then moved in with each other and lived together for the next 3 years. That was the big thing. And just being able to like truly figure out who I was, because I left home and I was so ridiculously cocky as a kid. So I think I needed to truly understand who I was. I went out there, didn't play sports for the first 2 years, kind of allowed myself to get out from, what my athlete identity was and understand who I was away from sport. Then when I went back into sport and then had it taken away and then had to figure out who I am again. And I think this was a big thing that helped. Maybe an overcorrection in terms of taking myself away from sport and being like, let's do poetry.
You really said Uno reverse with that one. Yeah. But I like it because you have so much to offer and so much to give. And in terms of range, you can say, yes, I do have a very athletic background, but I can sit down and I like writing. I like connecting with who I am as a person, my feelings, and I want to make sure that I can be that safe space for other people, because at times when I felt alone, maybe I didn't feel as though I had those safe spaces to vent to, per se.
No, absolutely. And, the last thing I want is to have friends be like, why it's not somebody I can go to. Like, that's the tough thing, is when you're in those situations and it's like, I just completely shut down. It's like, I don't want, and then friends look at you like, he's not the most reliable person. So I just wanted to, part of it was figuring it out for myself. Part of it was figuring out, so I didn't throw it on to the people I was close with. And then part of it is figuring it out for myself. So, people that I'm close with don't have to do exactly what I was just doing.
Totally. And it's also like, I'm with me 24/7 all the time. I have to learn how to navigate my emotions and my feelings so that they aren't getting projected onto other individuals.
Yeah. If I can't figure myself out, how is anybody else?
Yeah, like, bestie, please help. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing right now. Mental health is something that millions of people struggle with on various degrees. And as someone who is open about their mental health, what is one tool or tools that you use that have positively assisted you in staying positive and that you believe everyone should try at least once in their life?
I think a big thing is honestly just, and it's so simple, is just reflection. Like, reflect on the experiences you've had. And I think for me, I was so pessimistic. Like, I looked at everything through, like, not even like glass half full, like glass is empty. And I looked at everything just so negatively. The world's against me. Like, it's so easy. It's so easy to look at everything negatively.
Yes.
Like, put that much more effort into figuring out what's good in every situation you're in. And I think that helps so much just with, your viewpoint on everything and just your mood. Like, your mood is such a big deal. And how you convey yourself to other people is such a big deal. And I think that was the biggest thing, is, taking the time, reflecting on, what you've been through and trying to find some of the positives in those experiences. And it makes it that much easier to find the positive in every situation that you're living through in the moment.
That is really great advice. That line, you know what? I went like, when you had said reflection, because I actually wasn't expecting you to say that. I thought you were going to talk about traveling, because traveling for me is something
that's another big one.
Yeah. In terms of your book and everything, I was expecting you to say that. So you threw me a bit off guard when you said that, but in the best way. I love that answer. And I think self-reflection is also super important, as you kind of just touched on. And just being able to understand that mindset is so important. And you have the power to change your mindset, and don't give other people the power or validation to change your mindset, whether it be positive or negative. You have to make sure that you can keep a healthy balance for yourself. And I love that you just said that, because it wasn't what I was expecting. But
I will also say answer. Though, big thing is, like, have something planned for yourself. Like, whether it's a trip, don't go more than like 3 months without having something big.
This is so insane that you just said this, because since last year, I implemented that rule for myself, is whether it be that I have a trip that I can look forward to, whether I plan a date with a friend, whether I plan a concert or something, always have something to look forward to, because that will bring you that dopamine every day of, I'm one day closer to this, or I'm one day closer to that.
It's funny where I got that from. So, like, I was in a long distance relationship, and that was the big thing, is we wouldn't go every time we saw each other. We had to know the next time we were seeing each other. So we had the next trip booked always. So it was always something to look forward to. And when that ended, I kind of looked at it and I'm like, that was a really good way to do things.
Yeah.
Why don't I just implement that in my own life? So yeah, I hate going on a trip and not knowing, like coming home and not knowing where I'm going next. And
Totally.
even if it's just like a camping trip in the summer, or, you know, a guy's night on like a Saturday, like even small things, it's just something that you can look forward to. Whereas like if you are having a rough day or a rough moment, you can look and say, I got 5 days, 5 more days, and then I've got something I'm really looking forward to.
So I love that you gave that example, because no one has said that yet, but it's something that I as well use. And I think it's really helped even my own mental health, of just making sure I do have something to look forward to, because it does give me that little light in some of the days that are a bit darker. And I think everyone can use that advice to their own personal avenue or range of how they want to do that. But I love that you just said that. One of my final questions for you before we wrap up is, what is your favorite section or segment of your book that when you wrote it, you were left feeling either joy, satisfaction, proud, or emotional?
My favorite section of the whole book is honestly the last 2 pages. It's one piece, and it's kind of just a full reflection on everything. So I didn't write that piece until I'd gone through and reread the book and had re-edited everything, and I'd put it in there. You know, that was the last part of the editing process, was that piece. And it's kind of a full circle moment of everything that's in the book up to that point, everything I felt. So I think that's my favorite piece. That's the full reflection of the book.
I'm really, really, really excited to read it. I am so proud of you. I really am. I thank you for being so open and talking about the ups, the downs, when times are good, but also when times are bad, because there needs to be a little bit more conversation of when there is those difficult times, to also help people understand that they aren't alone. And you are such an open book, literally. But you are such an open individual in being able and comfortable and a safe space for individuals that need to talk to someone or let it out. And I'm not saying please flood Wyatt's DMs with your emotions. That's not where I'm going with this. What I'm saying is, I know that you are a good son, you are a good partner, you are a good friend, you're a good brother, and I am really proud of you, and you should be very, very proud of yourself as well.
Well, thank you for saying that. And thank you for this. I feel like men's mental health, for the most part, has kind of been like a fad subject. Like, I feel like it's like the month of November it pops up, or you know, if God forbid somebody in a high place has something happen to them, then that conversation starts. But I feel like outside of that, it's kind of just
we need a little more consistency.
We do.
And here I am. No. But my last question for you is one that I ask every single one of my guests, and I would love to know, Wyatt, what is your favorite thing about yourself and why?
Honestly, I think at this point in my life, there's probably a better way to phrase it, but probably just my calmness. Like I think I used to look at things very like high energy and feel like I needed to react anytime something happened. And I think over the last year or 2 years, I've taken a much healthier approach, and you know, letting myself take information in and process it before I need to do anything. Like, whatever can happen will happen, and I will just kind of go about it how I feel right in any certain moment. But I feel like I'm not super immediate reactive. Like, I will just give myself the time.
You are very calm, by the way. When you do speak, I'm literally just like, oh my God, this is very relaxing. Like, you aren't in my face or anything, and I love that. I can tell you have a very calm energy about you, and it's very comforting, and it's very easy to be around. And so, like I just said, I know that your friends are very, very, very lucky to have an individual like you along with your family members. I just think you are so cool, and you are so open and honest, and I love individuals like that so much. So I am so happy that our friendship is kicked off on a good note, and we can leave our hockey career in the past and start fresh, babe. With that being said, Wyatt, I want to thank you so much for coming on the What Fills Your Cup podcast today. I am so excited for everyone to get to know you. So Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of What Fills Your Cup. Do not forget to subscribe to the What Fills Your Cup channel and follow the What Fills Your Cup podcast page on Instagram. If you haven't heard it today, I love you. And don't forget to tell someone you love them because you never know who needs it a little extra. Bye, everyone. Say bye.
Bye.